Hey everyone, it's Bethany. Welcome back. In this video, we're going to do a really simple winter card. It turns out so cute. I have some brand new ink from Simon Says Stamp. They sent it over. They released their little green collection in the ink cubes. So cute. And then we're going to use a fun tree die in just a little bit. So I am going to use an A2 panel here, and I'm going to just tape that down to my mat really quickly because I want to start off by doing some ink blending. And before I start ink blending, I'm going to grab some Post-it tape because I want to mask off a smaller rectangle where I want to contain my ink. And by the time this video has come out, I have done this technique probably 2 or 3 times this season. When you find a technique that you really like and you find that it just turns out great each and every time, you tend to just put it in your toolbox and pull it out when you need it. And this technique is one that is my favorite. So I initially thought I would just mask off a 1/2 inch on the top and bottom, but I ended up taking that tape off and masking off the full inch. So with this tape, it's just about 1 inch in thickness. So I went ahead and used 1 strip along each side, equaling 1 inch of masked area on each side of this cardstock. So once I have everything all lined up, I took my time there. I really want to make sure I have some good right angles. But now I want to select the 3 ink colors that I want to bring into this card. And my final choices are Pine, Sage, and Aspen. And let me tell you, these are so pretty. I'm really thankful that they sent these over to me because this is definitely a beautiful green tone that is absolutely my style and I'll use time and time again. So I'm going to start with my lightest. This is the Aspen. It's so pretty. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And I'm just going to ink blend my little heart away. And then I will go ahead and grab my next color, which is Sage. And I'm going to create a little mid-tone area right in the center of my card. So I'm going for more of a little ombre look where I have a lighter color at the top that gets darker as we go down the card. And I love the way that these 3 colors play together. They are super, super pretty. They coordinate very well. So I will end this card. Look how saturated that pine color is. So I did a lot of tapping off of that on my mat. Some colors, they come in really muted. Some colors come in pretty bold. So as you're getting to know your ink, you'll just get to know which colors you need to tap off a little bit more than others, or which others you're going to really want to put some elbow grease into, because there's some colors that you just have to blend and layer and layer and layer until you get the exact look you want. So it's just a learning process when you have a new ink set. All right, I'm just rounding this off by making sure I blend those transitions. For me, this is looking super splotchy, and it always does to me. I always feel like I do a horrible job and then it's looking really just not very uniform. But then once you take the tape off, I'm not sure if something magical happens, but everything just seems to kind of tone down. And then you realize that, you know, it wasn't the worst thing in the world after all. At least for me. For some reason, once I take that tape off, I find that it actually does look pretty good after all. So I'll grab my A2 layer dies. I'm just going to trim this down just a hair, and I love how that looks. Look at that nice thick margin that we have that we created with the beautiful mask. So I love that Post-it tape. Grab some for your craft room. I use mine time and time again. It's good for so many things, but for this technique, it's certainly a winner. I'm going to run that through my Spellbinders Platinum 6. Look how pretty that turns out. And then I'll grab a little bit of white paint. I'll link this down below. It has turned out to be a really fun paint that I grab for time and time again. And I just want to add a little snow here. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that that isn't too thick and add a little bit of water, grab a paintbrush, and then I'm just going to start kind of flicking this onto my panel. Now, I will admit this gets everywhere. In fact, as I am recording this voiceover, some of this is on my computer screen, and it just kind of makes me crazy because this is a mess, but it really is a beautiful look. Now, I do end up grabbing a different paintbrush because this just wasn't working with the paintbrush that I had selected. So I really do need to get more of a thicker paintbrush for this technique, but I'm working with what I have, and I think this second brush does a much better job. So I'm trying to make this as random as I can without completely ruining it. The thing about doing this technique is knowing when to stop, because I promise you, right when everything looks perfect, if you go to add a little bit more, something ends up getting really blotchy. So know when to stop, know when to walk away, and that for me is perfect. So that's the final look for my little snowy backdrop, and now we'll move on to the trees. Now, this die set is not new from Simon Says Stamp. They've had this on their site for a while now, but I've had it in my collection and I haven't used it, and I thought this would be a beautiful idea for showcasing these brand new inks. So I'm actually going to use some 130-pound cardstock. I'm going to place these leaves right through my Spellbinders Platinum 6, and I'm going to go ahead and just trim out 3 of those. I kind of want to do a fun little trio here and then bring in a sentiment. Again, keeping this super simple, but I really want the eye to remain on that beautiful green blended backdrop. So I went with a really simple white little trio of trees, and I think that looks really fun. Using some art glue, I'm going to go ahead and use my tweezers as well to make sure that I don't have my fingers all over this die cut. For one, it keeps my fingers clean, but when I use the tweezers, it just helps me visually have more line of sight, because the less hands in the project, the better. And when you're working with a really tiny little canvas, in our case an A2 size canvas of 4 1/4 and 5 1/2, the less you have all of your hands in there, the better, because it just gets a little crowded. So tweezers end up being my best friend. Using a stamp block, I'll just make sure that these are all nice and pressed down before adding my 3rd tree, and I love how this turned out. That tree on the left is a little high for my taste. I got it just a little higher than I really wanted to, but I still love the card. But I would go ahead and just put that down just a tad if you are going to recreate this. It'll visually just round it out a little bit better. All right, so with that setting, I'm going to grab these brand new sentiment strips that Simon Says Stamp has just released. I'll link these down below. I'm so happy they sent these over, because I have found that I'm grabbing for these more and more. And this is a beautiful Thanksgiving set, but I found a really fun little sentiment that said, "in this season of gratitude," and I thought it was really fitting for this card. So using these teeny tiny thin foam strips, I'll link these below. These are great for using on the back of these little sentiment strips, but I'm going to go ahead and bump this up just a little bit, keeping this really simple, but I wanted a little bit of dimension on this little sentiment. All right, let's go ahead and just round this out by adding that just to the base of the trees. I end up loving how this turns out. It's very simple, not a lot of work, and it just ends up turning out exactly how I wanted it to be. So adding that quick little sentiment, super easy. Again, grab some of those sentiment sheets. They are so nice to have. They make really, really quick work out of a card. So if you need a quick card, they're definitely what you want. Using 110-pound cardstock at 11 by 4 1/4, I will do a top folding card and place my score line at 5 1/2. Then I'll just go ahead and press that down with the little bone folder that is included, and there is my final card. I'm going to add a little bit of foam tape to the back of my panel. This is really thin foam tape. It's super nice. Just adds a tiny bit of dimension without it being too much. And then as I secure my card base to my mat with some magnets, I'll go ahead and position this just in the middle with that foam tape, and it gives a beautiful final look. So I end up really loving how simple this is. Again, this is a technique that I tend to grab more often than not, especially this season, because it just works. It just works, and I end up really loving visually how everything turns out in the end. A little dewdrop is the perfect ending to this card. I love these dewdrops in all seasons of the year. They just add just a little bit to the end. I like how in the winter season they look like ice, how in the summer season they look like little water droplets from a swimming pool. They are a wonderful little embellishment to have, so grab some because you will not regret it. I'll add the last little one here to round out this card, and how simple is this? Simple, easy, and if you need to make a few of these, you absolutely could. Be sure to let me know if you are doing Christmas cards or winter cards right now. I'm finding myself super inspired with them, and I just love hearing what you are working on in your own craft room. Can't wait to continue crafting with you in the next video. See you soon.